Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sears. But as we all know, I do not do this program by myself.
That's right. My name is Mike Piowarski, coming to you live from the East Coast, the coast with the most, from the co-host with the most here on The Rundown. 2A Views, Conservative News. Craig, guess what day it is?
Except it's not Taco Tuesday.
From out of the sky.
Here we go.
Tacos.
Mike. What day is it, Mike?
It's hump day.
Hump day.
It's hump day.
Hump day.
That's right, folks. My apologies. It's not Taco Tuesday. I was all set up for yesterday and lost internet connection, and so I had it all queued up for yesterday. My bad.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The only thing I could think watching that was we're having camel tacos today.
Camel tacos. Is that like a Middle Eastern favorite?
Oh yeah, they love the camel taco over there. Yeah,
They use roti or puri.
Sure. Yeah, they use that foot bread, the naan, to make it with.
The naan. There you go. That naan foot bread. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. So how was your day off? Or actually, it wasn't your day off. You had to do some working yesterday.
Yeah, I got called in 4 minutes before the show yesterday. So
Yeah, that was fun. Which, at the same time, my internet just went kaput. It just said, no.
it was funny. I had just changed out of my standby on-call uniform to put on, which is really just changing the shirt and everything, and sat down. And as soon as I sat down, I was getting the call. I'm like, damn it. It's just perfect timing.
Well, at least you're making them dollar bills, though, man. I appreciate that entrepreneurial spirit.
Dollar bills, y'all.
Dollar bills, y'all. Because that's how it be sometimes. Sometimes you got to pay the rent.
Yeah.
Sometimes ain't nothing going on but the rent.
Ain't nothing going on but the rent.
But anyway, we're back today. We'll be back tomorrow. Independence Day. I'm going to be slightly pickled around this time on Independence Day, so we're not going to be doing a show then.
It's up for grabs.
It's up for grabs. Y'all do something. Get your phones out and just start talking about the news.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Y'all are invited. We invite you. Go ahead.
Now, if we get some breaking news, we might see you. We'll see, we'll figure it out.
There is not a day that you can go into and not expect that there's going to be something big happening because, well, we are doing the Trumpty dance right now, and that's pretty much an everyday thing.
DJT, baby.
DJT, doing the Trumpty dance. Anyway. Well, speaking of that, let's get into it real quick. But before we do, you know what we got to do, and let's start off with a quick shout out to our sponsors.
Pay them bills. Hey, let's say hi to our friends at Hitman Industries, hitmanindustries.net. You want to get yourself some AR barrels, this place to do it. You can get rifle caliber, pistol caliber, any length you desire. That's hitmanindustries.net. California Republican Assembly fighting a good fight behind enemy lines. Now you can take part in California's future today. If you want the best in tactical concealed holsters on the market, get on over to hogholsters.com, HAWG, hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown. That's all one word, no spaces, all caps. Get yourself a nice little discount. If you want the best in tactical field gear, web gear, law enforcement gear, military, fire, EMS, whatever it may be, get your group together, get your agency together, place an order at uscombatgear.com, or you can get everything except the gun.
That's right, folks. These are our sponsors. They bring us to you so that we can bring you to them. Do us a favor. Do them a favor. Do yourself a favor. Visit their websites. It's real simple. All you got to do is follow the links in the description to this program. Go there, check them out, spend some money with them, and when you do, make sure you tell them it was the guys over at The Rundown that sent you. Also want to encourage you, if you're watching the program live, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, we're taking your comments. Go ahead, let us know what's up, let us know what you think. If we find it to be interesting, we will share it with our audience. Now, mind you, we don't have to agree with you. We just have to find it interesting. But know that if we find it interesting and we disagree with you, it's probably because we're about to mock you.
You're going to get mocked.
Or at the very least, corrected. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
At the very least, you will be corrected. But it's all in fun. We're having a good time here. So anyway, once again, want to encourage you, like, share, subscribe, encourage your friends to do the same. All right, let's get into today's news story. I know you guys are wondering, it's like, what does Craig mean when he puts up there two big, beautiful bills? Well, that's because the Senate has passed their version of the big, beautiful bill. In fact, here is the vote as it took place.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being evenly divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed.
That's right. It was a 50-50 vote. And then in comes J.D. Vance. Well, in comes because he was actually already there because he knew that it was already going to be a tie. But basically came in and voted to pass the big, beautiful bill 51-50. Now, why do I call it the two? Why do I talk about two big, beautiful bills? Well, that's because the House passed one version and the Senate passed another. Well, now they're going to get together and they are going to compare the two bills and they're going to have some negotiations. And there's a lot of stuff going on where they're talking about the negotiations, but they're going to try and negotiate it and see if they can come up with one big, beautiful bill. And so CNN here decided to put together a little side-by-side to give you an opportunity to see what's the difference between the two big bills. For example, the House bill, it says here the bill would codify a Trump administration's proposal that would make changes to the Affordable Care Act enrollment process, including limiting enrollment periods, increasing verification requirements, and effectively ending automatic enrollment for many people. It would end the ability of certain immigrants, including refugees, asylees, and people with temporary protection status, to qualify for federal premium subsidies. It would also prohibit covering gender-affirming care as an essential health benefit, which would also impact adults covered by the Medicaid expansion. It would also restore federal funding for subsidies and reduce out-of-pocket costs for lower-income enrollees. But it could result in higher premiums. Now, the Senate proposal, it says here the legislation would not shorten the open enrollment period. It would not end year-round enrollment for low-income Americans, prohibit coverage for gender-affirming care, or restore federal funding for cost-sharing subsidies. It would increase verification requirements, although some differences in the House versions, and effectively end automatic enrollment and limit certain immigrants' eligibility. When they say certain immigrants, they're talking about illegal immigrants who are basically, by the way, already illegally on it. This would just specifically make sure, no, you cannot shift this money into a state program and then use that money to pay for illegal immigrants, as states like California had been doing. Here, border security. The bill calls for tens of billions of dollars for border security. I won't get into a lot of detail, but it includes surveillance. It includes adding to the wall. It includes adding border agents. And basically, the Senate proposal is about the same. Business tax breaks. This bill will allow businesses to fully write off their cost of equipment and research and development for the first year of the cost was incurred. These provisions would expire after 2029. The bill would temporarily allow companies to immediately deduct the cost of constructing or making improvements to certain types of buildings. So in other words, they wouldn't have to price it out over years or depreciate it. They could put the money in right. They could take the deduction right away. It says here, the Senate proposal legislation would make equipment and research development provisions permanent, and the immediate deduction for building construction would remain temporary. This here, car loan interest deduction. This bill will allow eligible taxpayers to deduct up to $10,000 in car loan interest, yada, 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 all the way up to 2028. The legislation in the Senate version all but used same thing, except for it didn't include all-terrain vehicles. Child tax credit, pretty much the same. Anyway, the whole point behind this is, and one of the main things I think that they're going to be talking about as this thing goes forward. By the way, hold on, let me see here. Defense, food stamps. I'm looking
Nothing
to see
mentioned in there about it, Craig. Nothing mentioned in there about it.
Nothing mentioned. Nothing mentioned in here about. Oh, you're talking about the tax stamp.
Tax stamps or the Hearing Suppression Act. Yeah, nothing in
Yes.
nothing mentioned in there about it.
So what was in the original Senate version was they were actually just going to remove them from the NFA, and the House version removed the tax stamps. Am I correct about that?
I think it's the flip flop. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason why the Senate version doesn't is because basically the parliamentarian in the Senate said that removing it from the items from the NFA is not fiscal, it's policy. So because it's policy and not fiscal, you cannot do that as a part of reconciliation, which means you only have to have 51 votes.
Yeah, she said it was against the Byrd Act. So she's saying that the tax stamp itself and the registration are separate items, whereas you and I and most of the Republicans they're still going to be fighting for this. Say that no, they are linked. There's no reason to have a tax stamp unless you pay the $200 tax. So you understand what I'm saying? That makes perfect sense, right? If I pay the tax, I get the tax stamp. If I don't pay the tax, there's no tax stamp. She's saying, no, we can still give the tax stamp and register them without accepting the tax money. Well, that
right.
doesn't make sense.
And so what you wind up having is you have for lack of a better term, you still have to go through an approval process in order to get it, as opposed to just walking into the store, buying it, and walking out with it.
Yeah, so it's clear, though. I mean, you're not going to be able to go and buy a short barrel rifle or a short barrel shotgun without doing the required background checks through an FFL if you're purchasing through an FFL. That's still the law.
Right.
Nobody's taken that law out. They've just taken out if I want my rifle to be 14 and a half inches instead of 16 inches, they've taken away the National Firearms Act requirement. And with the suppressor, it's not a firearm to begin with. It was added on there later and put in there. So they're just rightfully removing it because remember, a firearm is something that expels a projectile through means of an explosive action. A suppressor does not do that.
So the suppressor is still being removed from the NFA.
No, she's lumping them together and saying,
okay,
only taking away the tax stamp, the taxes, and you still have to register for the tax stamp. So she's in a sense said, we want to create a separate new registration system for this.
Right. So in other words, now basically, you still have to go through the registration process. So the timing likely will not change, but you're still going to have to apply and wait to get your approval.
Yeah. Now that's if they both end up agreeing, House and Senate. If they don't both end up agreeing, then we're going to see it all go bye-bye.
Well, that's the other thing. And by the way, folks, if this bill, if they don't come to some sort of an agreement and pass something, we would be looking at the largest tax increase in American history. Because keep in mind, the big part of this is it's about keeping the Trump tax cuts from 2017, making them permanent, right? If you want to know what the impact of whether or not you benefited from the Trump tax cuts, if you want to know, have this thing not pass and watch your taxes go up. And I don't know what anybody else says, but I know I saw about $200 a month difference in my withholdings when the Trump tax cuts went into effect. I don't know how many people out there would love to see just another 200, 300. And by the way, I'm not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. So I know a lot of people out there had more take-home pay than what they had previously.
Yeah, on average, for those of us in the under $400,000 or $200,000 class, you took home 15% more of your pay. Mm-hmm. So it's what you stand to get is if these 2017 Trump tax cuts expire, and it's at the end of this year that they expire, that you're looking at being taxed about 15% more.
That would, yeah, okay, yeah, that good enough. Hey, for someone who doesn't like doing numbers on the show, that was a pretty good number right there.
There you go. I was told today there would be math, so I studied.
Okay, so he studied. All right, good stuff. Good stuff. Anyway, folks, this is definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. I know they want to try and get this thing done and on the president's desk before Independence Day. So they're working through it. There are some folks in the House who are upset because they're like, well, the cuts don't go deep enough. And I get that. My whole thing and once again, politics is the art of the possible, not the impossible. And there's going to be some people who are going to demand the impossible. I get it. I understand why you want it. And I'll just tell you this, you're not wrong on the policy, but you have to consider the politics. It's get what we're getting, where we see literally, if this bill is followed, if what happens in this bill is followed, it is going to reduce the outgoing in the next 10 years. You're only going to see the deficit increase by $4 billion, as opposed to without it, it increases $20 billion. That's just the deficit. That's not even the national debt.
Correct.
So it's something to consider. If it keeps going along the trajectory, something to consider. Just saying.
Yeah.
It slows down the increase in spending. And I know that is a very, very BS political statement, but it is in fact true.
Well, when you look at Trump's plan for 4 years, right? So this takes it, like you said, from a $20 billion difference to a $4 billion.
I'm sorry, trillion. I'm sorry.
From a $20 trillion difference to a $4 trillion difference. Well, guess what it does next year?
Well, right? Next year you can make more cuts.
Right, because we're taking out 16 trillion, right?
Right.
With 4 trillion remaining. So let's take out another 16 trillion next year. You know what that means? Mm-hmm. That means 12 trillion in the black.
Right.
And do it again the next year. That puts us, 30 in the black,
right.
20 in the black. Then that puts us 36 in the black at the fourth year. So this is the first cut in 4 years. Right.
And this is just, quite frankly, this is the easy stuff. Next year's going to be the harder stuff. Everybody recognizes that more is that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, so far, how long have we had the tariffs in place? A month, 2 months, right? Wasn't it April 2nd?
If that.
April 2nd was when they started going in.
Yeah.
So far, we've already turned an $88 billion profit on the tariffs.
There you go. There you go, folks. And the stock market is still going up.
Yeah.
Not saying, just saying.
The price of goods is now the lowest it's been in 7 years? 4 years. I'm sorry.
4 years. Yep. Anyway. All right, moving right along. California is rolling back landmark environmental law. And what's that landmark environmental law? It's called CEQA, right? And this is basically any major project, whether it's commercial or if it's a major residential project, it has to go through this what's called CEQA process. And CEQA is very, very onerous, costs a whole lot of money. But because they want to build more housing in urban communities, California has decided that they are going to basically eliminate or suspend CEQA for urban housing development projects. Let me read a little bit of the article here for you from Politico. It says California is about to roll back landmark environmental law. Governor Gavin Newsom and the Democratic lawmakers are chipping away at California's Environmental Quality Act in the name of building more housing. California Governor, here we go. Lawmakers passed a trailer budget bill on Monday, exempting a wide array of projects from California Environmental Quality Act, including wildfire fuel breaks, water system upgrades, portions of the high-speed rail project, and advanced manufacturing facilities like semiconductors and EV plants. Environmental groups are apoplectic. They're conditioning the funding of essential services like health care. This huge State Policy Director of Leadership Council of Justice and Accountability. It's the latest and one of the most consequential turns in California's years-long trend of poking holes in CEQA, a foundational 1970s era law requiring construction projects to not only analyze their environmental impacts, but as federal law also requires, but address those impacts. Environmentalists defend the law as essential, and pro-growth advocates deride it as obstruction to critical housing infrastructure and industrial development. Now, here's the funny part, Mike, is I'm like, so in other words, Democrats are admitting that the laws or the regulations that they put in place are making it difficult for people to build, making it difficult for people to build houses, making it difficult for people to build buildings, to be able to build commercial properties. And so they're exempting it, but they're like picking winners and losers because only certain people in certain areas and certain industries get exempt from CEQA.
Interesting, isn't it, that California, it's okay for California to reverse its own EV mandates, or excuse me, its own environmental mandates when it's convenient for California. California is sitting there right now realizing, holy crap, we're losing citizens and businesses by the truckload. We need to do something to allow some to remain, or some to build new buildings and stay, or some new companies to build and stay, or start here. So it's incredibly convenient that California is able to reduce their own or eliminate their own environmental laws when it benefits them. Let's be clear on that. This is not so they can have new buildings or they can have a new place to live. This is so California can tax them more.
Right, Mike. And keep in mind, we're not talking, when we say them, we're not talking about benefit Californians. We're talking about will benefit the politicians and the people who contribute to their campaigns. That's who they're talking about benefiting. That's who they're interested in benefiting. Because in the end, I mean, why not just get rid of the law or streamline it? If you want to have some sort of environmental standard, why do we have to have these multiple standards where someone has to do 5 different reports to 3 different agencies, and at the same time, you can still be sued by environmentalists in order to kill your project? It still happens.
Yes. Yeah. This is about California government, California politicians putting more money in their pockets. It's not about environment. If it was about environment, they wouldn't be fighting. Well, President Trump in Congress passed the remove the waivers from the EV bill, the electrical vehicle bill from California, which your state, California, is now spending money to sue the president and Congress over. So hopefully that will be gone soon, and it's predicted that that will be completely overturned here shortly.
Well, that's just one of dozens of lawsuits that California is participating in or starting, because we committed $50 million to suing Donald Trump, and specifically to sue Donald Trump. We said, we got $50 million.
Yeah, and it's evidently not enough. So that's why they've gotten rid of that your environmental restrictions on buildings there. Yeah. In certain cases, so they could generate more money to sue against, ironically, environmental restrictions that the government's looking to remove.
Funny how that works.
California's removing environmental restrictions so they have more money to file suit against the government, the federal government that's trying to take away environmental restrictions.
Well, and keep in mind, they're not getting rid of the restrictions for everybody, just their friends.
Yes, exactly.
Now, here's one that's interesting. Now, for those of you who conceal carry, you understand the concept of reciprocity. Well, one of the problems that California has, California does not. Reciprocity is when one state recognizes another state's permit because they recognize theirs. So, for example, if you have a Utah or Nevada permit, you might have reciprocity. They might have reciprocity with Utah. So a Nevada permit is recognized in Utah, and the Utah permit is recognized in Nevada. Well, California recognizes no one's permit, right? In fact, not only do they not recognize anyone's permit, they don't allow non-residents to apply for permits to be able to carry in California. So if you don't have a California carry permit, or you are not current or retired law enforcement or public safety, you can't carry a firearm concealed or open in the state of California. Well, a court has ruled that that is a no-no. In fact, they've ruled that it is, in fact, unconstitutional. And this here coming from the folks over at Court News. California's refusal to issue non-resident concealed carry permits is unconstitutional, judge rules. A California law that prohibits non-residents of the state from applying for concealed carry gun permit violates both the Second and 14th Amendment, a San Diego federal judge ruled Tuesday. Opening the application process to non-residents does not limit California's ability to regulate who receives a concealed carry weapons license based on other measured parameters, wrote U.S. District Judge Kathy Ann Bencervengo.
Well,
That sounds right.
It would be, if she's Spanish, it's Bensavingo. If she's
Bensavingo.
Italian,
Yeah, I like that. I like Bensavingo. A
if she's
Barack
Italian, it's
Obama appointee.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. A Barack Obama appointee in her order. Non-residents are simply afforded the same chance guaranteed to residents. Guaranteed. Okay. Guaranteed to residents to exercise their Second Amendment rights. In reaching this conclusion, the court agrees with its sister court in the Central District that the challenged statutory framework's exclusion of non-residents violates the Second Amendment. Well, and I like the fact that they point out it also violates the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause, because that means that people in the state of California may have a right to keep and bear arms, may have a right to possess a firearm outside of their home. But if you come into California, your Second Amendment rights stop at the state lines. And that's what they're trying to say here is your right to be able to carry a firearm outside of your home shouldn't end at the state line. Seems kind of obvious.
Yes, it does. So here's what it comes down to. This is now, it's a mandate. That the judge said, Benchavango said that you have to allow for non-resident permits. Now they've given the state 30 days to file for an injunction to stop that. But for now, the way this reads, you can get a non-resident permit. Now, Craig, here's what it comes down to in law, and this is kind of what the whole decision is. If you're not going to allow reciprocity, then you must allow non-residents. So one or the other, the state of California is going to have to say we allow. And you know what California is? They're not going to say reciprocity because they don't want to rely on anybody else. So they're going to say non-resident. And what they're going to do is the same thing California always does. They're going to make a non-resident permit so impossible to get that it's going to end up back in court.
Well, right. You're going to have to do what Californians have to do. You're going to have to apply. You're going to have to get approved. You're going to have to do California training by a trained California instructor, which, by the way, you're not going to find any trained California instructors outside of the state of California because they just changed the requirements. It used to be if you were an NRA instructor, if you were qualified to be an NRA concealed carry instructor, then you were qualified to teach the class. Well, now you have to be post-certified, meaning you have to be trained. You have to have the level of training that those who instruct law enforcement have. And it was a long, drawn-out process. A lot of instructors decided not to get it, and a lot did. But no, I don't know anybody outside of California who's a firearms instructor who doesn't teach police. Well, who doesn't already teach police, law enforcement, who is post-certified. And admit it, the overwhelming majority of firearms instructors, even nationally, are not post-certified.
No, it was for a very long time where that was the premier one, was to get the post-standard certifications. And then about 20 years ago, NRA went through all the state legislatures and pushed to get the NRA one, the primary one. So those that were police certified instructors got pushed out. So there's plenty out there that still haven't maintained it for teaching law enforcement. But California will make that difficult. Listen, on the face value, I have both NRA and the post-standard certification to teach. But California is going to do something like, oh, it's got to be California. You have to be a California resident. You can only teach it in California. They're going to make a set of rules. They're going to make it so prohibitive that, again, this is going to end up in court again.
Yeah, probably so. Probably so. Although there's a lot of that right now, and a lot of it is winding up in court already, making it both cost prohibitive. You have one city in California that's charging $1,000 to apply for a permit.
Yeah.
and requiring a psychological exam.
It's much the same in the Northeast. I think it was New York was doing the same thing where you could get an out-of-state permit, but you had to come in, do your fingerprints and your checks and all that into New York, and then you had to wait 30, 90 days to do the next part, and then 30, 90 days to do. So you had to take multiple trips to the state to get everything done, and then it still didn't happen.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, folks, this is the big win for out of state, for people who like to visit California. Number one, it's also a big win for the Firearms Policy Coalition. Give them a big round of applause. Now, I will just say this: this is a district judge. It's going to be appealed, which means that they're going to go before a 3-judge panel in the Ninth Circuit. If they win at the 3-judge panel, then it'll go en banc, which is an 11-judge panel. If they win there, then it'll go to the Supreme Court. If they lose, it might actually be better if they lose at the 3-judge, because if they lose at the 3-judge and then ask for en banc, they won't get it. Then they can just go straight to the Supreme Court. But the fight isn't over. Support the Firearms Policy Coalition, firearmspolicy.org. Go there, kick some cash down to them, help them so that they can pay these lawyers to keep doing a great job.
Yeah, the director there, Brandon Combs, and then of course Cody Wisniewski, the director of legal affairs. They did a wonderful job here. Brandon dropped a great quote in there as well in the story. But Craig, I don't think this one wins out at all. I think this continues to get shot down because you have an Obama judge that's been appointed, so that immediately sends the message up to the next level. Hey, you've already got Obama appointed judges that agree with this. So how are you going to overturn that?
And I think I honestly believe it's a recognition of the Second Amendment, but I really believe the foundation of her decision is the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
In other words, if you have a right to carry a firearm in California as a California resident or as a California resident, all Americans have that right. We recognize every Californian has that right. Every American has that right. But that right doesn't stop at the state line. Just like it doesn't, Bruin said it doesn't stop at your front door, at your property line. This says it doesn't stop at the state line.
When you read the argument that the state filed, that Bonta filed, it wasn't so much about the right, Craig. He argued that people, remember the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. He said that people from outside the state of California don't qualify as people in California.
This from a party who can't tell you what a woman is.
Yeah.
Now they don't know what people are.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Yeah. He said they're people, but they're not California. So they're not people.
But to say his whole argument is, what do you mean, you people?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that is fun stuff. And on the lighter side of news, Donald Trump visited Alligator Island, and I want to show you a little video clip here from his visit there to not Alligator Island, Alligator Alcatraz. I'm sorry, I misnamed it, but Alligator Alcatraz. Here's a little video with him and Ron DeSantis.
Viewers at home should note that this is air-conditioned facility, so if any of the news claims are keeping them out in the hot, humid South Florida, that is wrong. It's probably 62 degrees here, to be honest.
Hey, Biden wanted me in here, okay? He wanted me. It didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here.
I like the way he kind of threw that in under his breath.
Yeah.
Someone.
Little Biden dig. Two sidebars from that. One, you notice that was not something Ron DeSantis said. That was not something President said. That was not something one of the aides said. That was a question that a reporter pointed out. It wasn't even a question. It was, hey, sir, one important fact also is it's air conditioned, so the media is starting to make that turn also, so they don't look like idiots. After this statement here, when he took the podium, President Trump got up there and did nothing but talk of greatness of Ron DeSantis. I mean, he said, all the things you could expect Trump to say. Hey, he's a good friend. Sometimes we barb back and forth, but we always end up back together. We're those kind of friends. Those are the kind of people we are. And I'm sure we're going to continue to do good things in the future together. So just as talked about in the past, I told you these boys will always end up back together again because they're on the same side of the fight.
Well, and that's just how Donald Trump is. And that's why I think that people who get into extended battles with Donald Trump. It's like, look, you know what? I'm like this. He's going to insult because that's what Donald Trump does. But in the end, you know what? When you agree on stuff, Donald Trump will be there. And when you can work well together, Donald Trump will praise you. When he doesn't feel like he can work with you on something, he's gonna badmouth you. In politics, I always say there's no permanent friends, there's no permanent enemies. There's only hopefully permanent principles.
And yeah, and I'll tell you, pat on the back to Governor of Florida here, Ron DeSantis. He went to the feds with this and said, "Hey, we could do this for you," and it benefits Florida. You know why? Because we are not a sanctuary state. So we take all of these people that have federal holds on them and put them in our county jails and our state prisons. Well, guess what? Now we don't have to anymore. Now we got a special place for them. We could free up that overcrowding in our current jails.
Well, and that's also going to mean not just that, but they're going to now, instead of them having to foot the bill to have them, they're going to be getting paid by the federal government to house them, as well as those coming from other states. And then it's also going to be cheaper because they don't have to feed the alligators.
That's right. Exactly right. Little spicy alligator menu. Yeah.
All right, folks, that now brings us to our parting shots. Parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces, one word. Get your Hog Holster today. Speaking of what Brahman was just talking about, this is one that Mike sent over. I love this one right here. Go ahead and I'll let you go ahead and read this one, Mike.
Yeah, you got Big Mama Gator, got a little gator riding on its back. And the little gator says, "Oh boy, we going out to eat? Where are we going, Ma?" And the big gator says, "To a brand new Mexican place that just opened."
Good stuff. Good stuff. Now, I also wanted to share with you the folks over at the Babylon Bee, Fake News That You Can Trust. They had 10 more states announce fund migrant prisons. So I'm going to read some of these here to you. You've got, in Montana, you have Grizzly Gitmo. In California, you have Alcatraz. Idaho has Potato Penitentiary. Right. Texas has Remember the Alcatraz. Kansas has the state of Kansas. Indiana has Farmer McGillicuddy's Inescapable Corn Maze. Ohio has Toledo or Cleveland.
Just Toledo. Yeah,
Just Toledo. Pennsylvania has Amish Alcatraz. Massachusetts has Chief Warren's Teepee. That must be a Boston joke. I don't get it. And then Maine has Stephen King miniature paper mache Shawshank Redemption replica.
You know, the comment on Toledo reminds me of the old joke, Craig. You remember this when the couple's laying in bed together and she rolls over and says, "Let's do it in a dirty place." And he says, "Why do you want to go to Cleveland?"
Yes, exactly. I have heard that one before. All right, now tomorrow being Independence Day, one of the things I wanted to kind of share with you was just not tomorrow, Friday. I'm sorry, being Independence Day. I'm sorry, I still got 2 days. Look, my week is all discombobulated, all right? But I wanted to share this video with you because I love what this guy, he's testifying and he's talking about, people talk about separation of church and state. And there's a saying in here, there's a phrase in here that is the phrase of the day. And I want to see if you guys get what it is. Because to me, it is the quintessential phrase of all that he says. So check it out.
This is the Bible that came out in 1782. It says, "And they, Congress, recommend this edition of the Bible to the inhabitants of the United States." So the first Bible printed in English in America came with the approval, the authorization, the endorsement of Congress. But what's more interesting is Robert Aiken, when he made his petition to Congress on why they should do this, he said, "We have a Bible shortage in schools." And then Congress gave an endorsement in the records of Congress. One of the things they agreed to was we needed more Bibles for schools. It was, quote, "a neat addition to the Holy Scriptures for the use of schools." Congress not only agreed to approve it, they then endorsed. The reason we have the first Bible in English in America was in part so that we would have it in schools. And I know that there's probably going to be people that would come and testify and say, wait a second, but separation of church and state, you can't have religion in schools. The founding fathers believed in separate institutions, but not secular institutions. The very idea from the Declaration was that there's a God who's given us rights, and government's job is to protect those rights. To pretend like we can't acknowledge God, well, then we're risking losing those God-given rights.
So before you comment on this one, Craig, let me see if I'm going where you're thinking. Okay. Here's what the separation of church and state means. So anybody wants to throw it up at you. Okay. We can have religion in our government. What we can't have is religion and secular institutions passing laws. That's just separation of church and state.
Well, yes, or having the state pass laws that restrict religion.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And for me, it was the difference between, it wasn't about, it was about, I'm sorry. They wanted they wanted them to be separate. They wanted a separate government and church to be separate, but they did not want it to be they didn't want it to be secular. They wanted to be separate from religion, but they didn't want it to be secular.
Well, you look where we came from. We came from the UK. We came from Britain, right? And everybody's heard of the Church of England. And when kings and queens were going up and down and dying and changing throughout, you always had the Church of England, which tried to rule and pass laws as well. And that was the reason for the separation of church and state. So we did not have that. We did not have the conflict between the two and which is the governing body.
Right. Exactly. Anyway, that's good stuff. That was good stuff. Anyway, let's go ahead. We're at the end of the program now, but before we go, we're going to give one last shout out to our sponsors.
Yep. Hitman Industries, hitmanindustries.net. Get yourself over there. Get your an AR barrel. You got rifle calibers, pistol calibers, any length you desire for your next AR build or rebarrel your current AR platform. That's hitmanindustries.net. California Republican Assembly, fighting a good fight behind enemy lines. Now you can take part in California's future today. And if you want the best in tactical gear, field gear, web gear, law enforcement, fire, EMS, whatever it is, get your group together, get your agency together, place an order at uscombatgear.com, where you get everything except the gun.
That's right, folks. Please take a moment, visit our sponsors by following the links in the description to this program. And with that, we are done for the day. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program and encouraging your friends to do the same. We will be back tomorrow on Throat Punch Thursday. Till then, y'all have fun, stay safe, and we will see you mañana.